Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PostPhDirections podcast. It's Alma Me's mission that all PhD graduates have the necessary knowledge to successfully start a career post-graduation, whether it be outside academia or inside academia. In today's podcast, we address a topic closely related to our mission and vision, which is what is the role of universities in career development of PhDs to ensure they feel well prepared for their next step and can make informed decisions about it. To discuss this topic, I'm very pleased to welcome Professor Bob Harris, Academic Vice President, that is a dean, by the way, guys, of doctoral education at Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, who also leads an active research group studying immunotherapy in neurodegenerative diseases. Karolinska Institute is often used as a benchmark for doctoral education for many other universities across the globe. Bob has been developing doctoral education at KI for the past 18 years and has implemented important quality improvements along the way. And with this, welcome, Bob.
Thanks very much, Elena. Very nice to be here. It's a pleasure to be part of your new podcast adventure. So I'm happy to be one of the first guests.
I'm looking forward to chatting with you. So let's start. To set a foundation for our discussion, please explain briefly for our podcast listeners what is included in doctoral education and what are tasks of the Dean of Doctoral Education.
Task of the Dean, I'm not sure you want to hear everything about, but basically, doctoral education is the training in becoming a researcher. So there's an educational part and a research part. And as the Dean of Doctoral Education, I'm responsible for all doctoral education which is done at Karolinska Institutet. So that's over 2,300 PhD students with about 5,000 supervisors. We have 8 clinical research schools, 12 programs, over 250 courses, and so a few things to keep me busy when I'm not being a researcher.
Thank you. And Bob, I would also like to ask one question because I already mentioned it in my intro. KI is very well rated when it comes to doctoral education, not only nationally, but also internationally. So a lot of people turn towards KI to see how things are done there. So why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I think it's obviously one shouldn't brag about one's own successes. I mean, the university, but it is true that I think in a lot of places in the world, and the Karolinska's doctoral education is held up as the gold standard. I can say that because I've been involved in international organizations where this seems to be the prevailing theme. So what have we done? We spent a lot of time developing it and doing everything we can to maximize the potential quality experience. And I think it's the work that we put in and defining best practices, and those best practices are then being shared with other universities, which makes it something to look up to and something to learn from. And obviously, as one university, if we've found a way of doing something well, then we'd like to share that with other people to help them get to the same stage as fast as possible. So I think we have a good reputation for that. I think the other thing with the Karolinska Institute, of course, is that we're considered to be a very strong research university. With the name institute, people often think of us as a research institute, but we're actually a full university offering all sorts of educational programs within medical sciences. The point I wanted to make was we're very well known for our research, but over 50% of the research actually involves PhD students. So if we have this reputation as being a great research establishment, it's because we have great research education.
Perfect. Thanks for giving us a little bit of an insight into KI, but also into doctoral education. And this sets the stage for what we're going to discuss today and explains why I want to talk to you, because this podcast is all about careers. What do you think is a normal career trajectory for PhDs post-graduation?
I think we need to there's no normal anymore, but maybe we could say the traditional trajectory. And if you think that PhD education started in Germany with Humboldt, and the idea was that Humboldt would then be able to teach his student everything he knew, so that person would become the image of the teacher. And this has been the model up until very much recent time. So you teach what you know to be an academic professor, and the next generation will become professors. That's not the case now, because most people won't actually continue in the academic world. So I think that there is no such thing as a normal career trajectory. The trajectories become enormously varied, and that is the norm.
Cool. Love this answer, of course. If we look at the numbers, I think you made a really important point, because absolutely, depending on which study you look at, but it seems like 50 to 70% of PhDs directly seem to pursue their career. I don't want to say leave, because the words we use have power. So I would say they continue their career outside of academia.
Continue their career, absolutely. So you can
Yeah.
continue your career within academia, or you can continue your career somewhere else, but you're still on your road. That's the important thing, and that's really where the doctoral education is going to get you.
So now another question, of course, because this is all around careers, and I'm always very interested in my, when my guests come on to the podcast. So what would you say, has your career followed this route?
Well, yes and no, I'd say. I mean, I did my PhD at University College London in England. I moved to Sweden as a postdoc, become a group leader, lead a very active research group still. But then I start to then do other things and increase my career skills by taking on leadership roles. And then during recent years, there's been more emphasis on that. I've always been teaching during all the years, but I get more leadership roles within education as well. So yes, in part, yes, I'm still a researcher, and I've gone through the academic journey of becoming more and more independent as a researcher. But then at the same time, I've been able to develop my career in other ways, which actually take me into realms of leadership and education, which I wouldn't have otherwise necessarily done.
Thank you for sharing. It was interesting to hear what your career trajectory really was.
I just have to say one thing, which is I think is quite important. I think we tend to categorize people as researchers or educators. And if there's one thing I'm quite proud of, that I'm both. And there are a few people that actually have attained the same type of excellence in both sides. So I'm not saying that to try and plug myself, but just saying we need to embrace the fact that there are different alternatives and different people will do it in different ways. And I'm proof that you can actually combine both two.
Absolutely. I think it's a very, personal decision. Some people, they like to go beyond and learn maybe other things. I think, that was the case for you. And some people, they like to stay very connected to the science. I can also see how it's exciting to try and learn new skill sets as you progress in your own career journey. So
Absolutely.
And I think there is, sorry, Bob, but to the point, I think there's never a right or wrong. It's just what is the right thing for you, right?
Absolutely. It's a personal choice, and you have to do whatever makes you most happy at the end of the day. You should be happy in your career choices. And different people are suited to different things. We need to have elite researchers who do no teaching or leadership, and we need to have people that combine all of those things. We need to have elite teachers that don't do so much research as well. There has to be a role for everybody, and depending on your personality and depending on what your interests are, then there's room for everyone within that spectrum.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think it's also important to highlight that if you want to pursue a career within academia, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the lab. There are a lot of other positions within academia, and a lot of people, they always think about leaving academia, but there are a lot of other administrative tasks that one can take on.
Not just administrative, but leadership roles. The universities don't run themselves, and departments don't run themselves. So you need people to actually be, the university has to have a strategy for how it's going to develop in the future. It has to be modernized and so on. So there's lots of things to do other than pipetting and culturing petri dishes.
Absolutely. So now, since we're so focused on careers and what is the responsibilities of universities as a topic of today's episode, so why do you think it can be so tough for PhDs to plan their next career step and make that transition? What is it really that makes it especially difficult for that type of group?
It's a very interesting question. There are many different aspects of it, but I think fundamentally it's a lack of knowledge. A lack of knowledge and a lack of ambition to get the knowledge in order to make the right career choices. And that's why people buy into the traditional view that you have to continue in the academic world if you're going to be success. If lots of people don't actually enjoy research so much, so they should be doing other things. So choosing the right path is really critical. But then you need to know what's out there. You need to know what your options are. Knowing where you want to go is one thing, but then knowing how to present yourself in order to be attractive to actually get those jobs, that's the next thing. And because you've been trained for many years to think like an academic, then you sometimes get lost in translation and you're not actually be able to show what the worth of all your learning and all your skill set development has been. So I think that part of that is the transitioning to a mindset where you really need to get knowledge of where you're going in order to know how you're going to best fit in.
I absolutely love what you said in the beginning because I think it's all about being proactive in making career choices and understanding you're the creator of your career. So it's nothing that is going to happen to you. I mean, you can go with the flow and you can just go with what you set out to do. And I think what I would like to encourage in general academics or anyone who is on the academic track to sometimes just sit back and reflect, does this still serve me? Because, I feel like sometimes when you do a bachelor's, you do a master's, you do a PhD, and then you don't even question your choices anymore. You just go with the flow. And I think this is something where I really would invite, because as you said, research is not something that suits everyone. And some people are not necessarily happy in this environment.
No.
And I think it often comes because there might be a mismatch or a misalignment with their values and what they really want in life. So it's important to also understand values can change and you need to readjust. So really what is important to you, there are all sorts of different factors one can take into consideration.
We talk about expectations, and there can be different expectations that you stay and do an academic career, expectations that you leave and do something else. But really, one should fundamentally answer that: what expectations do you have of yourself? What is going to give you the most joy in life, and what's going to give you the most reason to wake up every morning and say, "I really want to make a difference, and this life will make a difference to me." So I think that you can't just wait for it to happen. When I interview students at the end of their PhD education, within the 1 year to go, and then ask, what are your plans? And many will say, or some will say, well, I just wait till after graduation, and then I'll think about what I'm going to do. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, I know what you're going to do. You're going to be unemployed for 6 months because it takes you 6 months or a year to really work out where you need to go and to be able to prepare yourself for that transition, for those interviews, to make sure you have a good applications. We need to get this mindset in. And you mentioned the word reflection, which is one of my favorite, that, each of us every week or every year should be thinking, am I still doing what I'm doing for the right reasons? And if not, then what is it that I'd like to do instead, and start to work towards that. So we need to be actively thinking, taking our professional responsibility to ourselves in order to make those correct choices.
It's interesting what you said, and I think it's something I see a lot in the work we do with Alma Me too. PhDs, they kind of miss that point of thinking about their next career step. So they start thinking when they have actually reached the point of graduation. And this is, of course, very late because, when you understand the market a little bit outside of academia, a lot of positions are filled through networking, for example. So these are all opportunities that you're losing out. And so I do truly believe if we could encourage PhD students to maybe start thinking about these things a bit earlier. And this really brings me to my next question about what do you think are your thoughts about how universities should be preparing their graduates for careers post-graduation? Because considering that you said, a lot of them are unemployed for half a year or a year, it's not only a loss on an individual level, it's a real loss on a societal level. So I'm thinking, what are your thoughts on, the responsibility of the universities helping?
I think responsibility is a tough word, of course, or a heavy word. There are different levels of responsibility. At the end of the day, the individual has to be responsible for themselves. What the universities can do would be to help students contextualize their skills. We talk about hard and soft skills, and the hard skills are your research skills, where you've been learning to run an MRI machine or do experiments with cells in culture dishes. But the soft skills, like the presentation technique, being able to communicate in word and in text, being able to collaborate, being a good colleague, all these type of things are actually the things which industry or other alternative career paths will actually be looking for. So we need to make sure that during your time as a PhD student that you're understanding what these skill sets will be good for, so that you understand your worth, you understand why you will be employable. And this idea of like alternate career paths, there are no alternate career paths. The alternative career path is to stay in academia, according to the statistics, less than 5% after 10 years. So it's choosing your career path. So we need to think about the semantics there, but we need to make sure that we allow the students to develop this idea of how they can contextualize their knowledge, their attractiveness to employers in order to then make sure that they're applying in the right way and fitting in. And we also need to actually, the other part of the equation is to actually train the employers to understand what they get with worth of PhD students. So it's a sort of, we need to translate the skill sets from both ways in order to make them perfect fit. But the major point is, what's the responsibility? We have career services, and we need to expand on the career services thought processes that we offer by allowing them to have these conversations. So at Karolinska, what we're doing now is we're going to start to include a third year where you do a 4-year PhD. So 1 year left, there'll be a control point where you start to have that discussion. What are you planning for your career? You've got 1 year left. What are you going to do to make sure that people are already starting to have that process? So that's a positive new thing that which we'll introduce there.
Yeah, there are two things that I would like to just elaborate a little bit on, because I think they're very important. Considering that we have, PhDs that sometimes look for a job for half a year and a year, what you said, we need to help employers understand what a PhD can bring to the table too, because there are a lot of industries that hire a lot of PhDs just because of what they do, pharma, biotech, tech in general. But then there are lots of other industries that could actually benefit from PhD talent, because the way, PhD education is built, you're actually quite a resourceful person, and really having the bidirectional conversation here, I think, is important, and it should go in both directions. So I think that's a very important point.
But it's not only understanding the skill sets, it's also there are stigmas attached to it. There are people in society and different companies that sort of don't really understand that they can sometimes feel threatened by a PhD. You're the most academically trained people in society, and that can be quite daunting to some employers, thinking, well, I haven't got that level of education. And this is part of the translation. Just because you've got a PhD, it doesn't mean that you're super fantastic. It just means that you've been able to apply yourself and learn both hard and soft skill sets that might be of use there. So we need to train the people receiving our graduates to actually receive them in the right way as well. Don't be threatened by them, but see actually their potential instead. What are they going to be able to offer to your company and bring with them the skill sets that's going to boost whatever it is we're doing. So I think we need to do that two ways. We offer internships, and that's really good to sort of test a time in a setting outside of the academic world, whether it be in working at a bank or for an NGO or in a pharmaceutical company. And I think that's obviously a great experience for a student to be able to get a look into the future. But we need to do more to actually have discussions with the companies to say, well, we can have career fairs and they can be there saying, look, this is what we do and who's interested. But we need to educate that side as well. So I think there's training. We need to train the students to know how to apply to the companies. We need to train the companies how to actually receive the students coming. And if we can do both of those things, then, then we should get a much better fit.
I couldn't agree more. And this brings me like what KI or Karolinska Institute currently does in this context, because I do know, since it's my alma mater, I know you're not only excellent at doctoral education, but there are a lot of universities nationally and internationally that turn to Karolinska Institute because they have an excellent career service. As you mentioned, the internship program, and since I am in close contact with them, I know the internship program has opened up positions for PhD students who have gone to these companies and done an internship, because they got to know the person, they got to see what someone can bring to the table. And this really, this is like when an employer sees an action with zero risk
Yeah.
because the internships are paid by KI. So you take someone in and you just give that person a shot, and you need to supervise them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a zero risk. And if you think about hiring, it's all about minimizing risk, and that's of course a fantastic way. So what else do you offer? Why is it that people turn to you?
The internship program, of course, is a flagship program, and we're very happy for that. But it's not that many people. It's only 30 people at a time, which is, a small proportion. We take in 350 PhD students every year, so 10% is they get the opportunity for that experience at any one time is quite few. We do have a course on career planning. We offer workshops. We started to run your Alma Me course, which I think is a great way to get people just at first base about this thought process that we're talking about, stimulating their reflective processes. But I think, we have a very hard-working career service, but there are not so many people for the volume. We have 6,500 students, undergraduate students or master students, and we have 2,300 PhD students. So you've almost got like 10,000 people. And that's only the students. We have to remember that you don't actually leave academia just when you graduated. You leave after your first postdoc, or after you become a junior faculty, or even after you become associate professor, because it's quite difficult to make your career in science and go all the way. Competition is really tough. The expectations for what you need to do research-wise are getting even tougher. So people are dropping out at all sorts of different levels, and we need to make sure then that we're actually not only focusing on the recent graduates, but we actually have a system where anyone can then prepare themselves for the next career choice. So I think that given the size of the task for the career services, then some universities around the world and even in Sweden don't have career services at all. So there's a definite work to do in this area. And I think the reason why it's important is that what is the point of a university? And we say, okay, research and education. So, okay, how do we know we're doing good research? Well, we get grants in and we get publications out. Tick the box, we're doing a good job. But really, isn't it supposed to be about the experience of doing the research, which is important? And the same for education. We got lots of students coming in, fighting for places. We get them through, we give them the diplomas, happy days. Now they're gone. We got the statistics there. But again, have we really prepared them for what they then are going to do? So I think that universities need to care a lot more about what happens, because that will increase our attractiveness. It's not just come to Karolinska because it's a great research education you can do good research, doctoral education, you can do good undergraduate, but they take care of you and they give you that start in life, in your professional career, whatever it will be. And I think that that's the new message that a modern university needs to embrace.
I absolutely love that, of course. So one thing that I really would like to emphasize or comment on is, because now we're mostly talking here today freshly graduated PhDs, but you made a really important point. There are a lot of PhD degree holders that drop out at different points, and they often are in a situation that they're even more demoralized. They don't understand the value, how they could fit after 20 years of academia. What is the value that I can bring outside? Many deal with the thoughts of being a failure.
Right.
And I think it's just important to say, look, we all have our own path, and you're not a failure just because you cannot make it in academia. And I think a very important thing is, and I don't even know if this is communicated that well, but making people aware an academic career is not something that is guaranteed.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It's absolutely not a failure. Only few people can make it. And I think that's so important too. So thank you for bringing this up. It's not only the PhD graduates, but it seems really like you at KI, or I always say KI, sorry guys, Karolinska Institutet, you do great work in different aspects. So how do you think KI can inspire other universities or organizations to develop this aspect of career preparation for their graduate PhDs, which seems like you got a really good understanding what they're facing and how to potentially help them make that jump?
Yeah. I think that there are lots of things one could be doing, but I just want to come back to the point which is related to my answer to your question there about feeling a failure. You're not the failure if you choose to then do something else with your career. There's a famous quote: "Better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." You have had an experience, and that's formed you into the person that you are. If it doesn't mean that you're going to become a professor or a super successful group leader, it doesn't mean that that's been a waste of time, because all those formative years have made you into the person that you are, which will then make you attractive into whatever it is you go on and do. Obviously, the more experience you got, the higher the level you probably go into the next job. So I think that's really important, and that's one of the things the universities can do to get rid of the stigma that you failed. A failed researcher is someone that teaches, or a failed researcher is someone that goes to work as an analyst in the bank. It is a completely wrong way of doing it. So I think that Karolinska Institutet can inspire other organizations by spreading these best practices. We can create a new mindset. We can create something that's working by offering this type of new way of thinking. And if we start to then become an attractive university because we're taking care of our students and our faculty at all levels, then that's going to be good for us. More people will say, well, what are they doing that we're not? So I've had the good fortune, or I still have the good fortune, to be involved in international organizations such as Orpheus and PhEBS, and there we have a network of universities dealing with education at all different levels with Orpheus doctoral education. And here we have the chance to actually share best practices. We define them within Orpheus, like how a good doctoral education should be. And this sharing is caring, and that you can then do globally. So I think that we can, at Karolinska Institutet, we can pave the way. We've made several innovations, which I get the good fortune to go around the world and talk about what we do to try and inspire people. And then maybe we can do it by having some type of mandatory career preparation part of the doctoral education, and part of that fits in with what's happening in European politics. You've probably heard of COARA, the Coalition of Advancement of Research Assessment, which is basically saying it's not just your published papers, which is an important thing, but anything that you've done. You should be able to see the whole multitude of skill sets that you developed, and that fits very much well in to what we're talking about, that if you can contextualize that, then you should be able to show that you have lots of career options. So you're not a failed researcher, you're actually a smart researcher if you actually can do a variety of different careers instead. So the mindset, the semantics, we need to
I absolutely love that. In my ideal world, I would hope that we could see PhD education as something that can teach you a lot of skills and prepare you for your next career step, whether this is in or outside of academia, but not define it as, you're here on this path to stay in academia. So, but as you said, it matters a lot, the words. So maybe the first thing we should stop, we should say leaving academia, which I also do a lot, because it means we're leaving something behind. But what we actually do is we just go on to do something else.
By extension, we should start talking about in and out as well, because it's not mutually exclusive. You can leave to industry and come back to academia, or vice versa as well. It's more like if we use those type of semantics, we're categorizing them as options which are mutually exclusive, where they really shouldn't be. We should be talking about choosing preparation for the right career choice for that individual. And this is why it's then very, very individual. And every individual needs to see their own worth. It's not that every bioinformatician is the same. They might be competing for the same jobs, but what the skill sets they bring will be very personalized. So I think that, yes, we need to be very careful about words.
So how would you intend to create a mindset shift in PhD supervisors, or let's say university leadership, to further develop this aspect of career development preparation that we just covered?
Some more than practically providing the services and the possibility of doing that, I think it very much relates to modernization of the academic world. We tend to be very traditional in the academic world. We're very proud of our traditions, and that's really cool. We had a graduation ceremony down at City Hall last week, and it's so fun for me to put the hats on the head of the new graduates. That's a tradition that's been going on over 100 years. So it's really fun with some traditions, but do we have to inherit them all? Can't we create new ones? So the world is changing. We have all sorts of technical revolutions when it comes to technology, artificial intelligence, digitalization. The whole way we do research and education is being revolutionized. And in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, it's going to be very, very different now. So we need to have that in mind in order to be online, to change the mindsets in like, and not see that the big question is, will universities survive when we have global possibility of education? Will you need to be actually defined to one place, one alma mater or not? So I think that the universities will have to modernize the way that they market what it is we offer. And this then comes back to, well, we care about what's going to happen to you, both when you're here studying or doing research, and then what happens to you afterwards as well. And I think that if we can get that in mind, so that's one aspect. The other thing about the sort of the digitalization and AI technologies for someone who's in more senior years in my academic employment is that we have to embrace the fact that the youngsters can actually sometimes know a lot more than we do. We have the years of experience, but we don't necessarily have the right experience. So I'm very fond of this idea of reverse mentoring, where we have I learned about AI from my PhD students, and they've opened my eyes and telling me which tools I should be using in order it's very interesting. We have these modern pedagogical cool things like a 3-minute thesis. You have one PowerPoint slide with no animation, and you got 3 minutes to pitch your PhD. And I've experienced, been judging these competitions. They're absolutely wonderful when PhD students do it, but try and get old professors to do it, and it's hilarious because many of them 3 minutes is like they probably just introduced themselves. That's 3 minutes that's gone. So I think that this is a really interesting time where students and teachers and younger researchers and older researchers will start to gel together, to actually produce and use research and education together. And this will then be one mindset that we can embrace and say, hey, but like as a 50-year-old academic, I don't need to understand all these modern technologies because I've got a young generation that knows that. I can come with my stuff instead. So I think that the mindsets need to change, and it's not like we're still stuck in Humboldt's image saying, I'm going to teach my student everything I know. If I can only teach him what I know, then I've failed because they need to go past me. So I think that these are things, we can all continue to develop, but there needs to be then a clear message from the universities that this is the way that the university will develop in the future as well. So that's my firm belief. A rather long answer. I apologize for that.
No worries. I love what you said, and it's quite encouraging to hear, that the young generation can teach something to the older generation, because often I feel like we have not much to share or not much to give. But I think it's changing with digitalization. We're much closer to, I see it already now. I mean, I know how to master LinkedIn. I know how to master Instagram. TikTok. I want to be on TikTok with Alma-Me now, but don't ask me about trends. I'm already out. It's, this is where I can learn. I can learn now from my godchild who is like 18 years old, because she says, you need to add this music. And, and I love it because it's, you always have something to give, because the world is evolving so fast. The young generation, they grow up with things that we never had. So they master these things in a very different way.
But the mindset is very much understanding the possibilities. I'm a very old-fashioned person in some respects, and I never used social media. I've never been interested. But I did the MME course, and part of it was learning about LinkedIn presence. And suddenly I saw, this is an opportunity for me, because I get the privilege of going around the world talking about doctoral education, and now I could actually start to post. And I've been posting for the last 3 months and doing quite well. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't had that possibility to learn from people that are actually actively doing it. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can. I'm the living proof.
Thank you so much. I love this. And I just want to say one more thing about LinkedIn. It's indeed, I hope in the future to see more academics on LinkedIn. I think it's such a great platform to, share knowledge, and scientists are the ones that are really at the forefront of new knowledge creation. I think it's like one of the coolest things. And I wish they would start sharing it with the rest of the world, because I think they would be so excited to hear about it.
I think that, the one thing that I often, when I've been talking during the year about AI and the digital revolution, and get asked then by teachers that get rather upset saying, you're going to be out of a job because AI is going to be doing half of your work for you. But then I'm saying no, because it's going to free up your time to learn something more. And you're going to, I think that will become even more important to be storytellers, because storytelling is not anything that AI can do at the moment, because it's not able to see the big spectrum of things. It's more than facts. It's the feeling about why people did things, and telling stories is important. And one of the travesties is we stopped telling stories. We don't socialize in that way. We don't sit around the dinner table anymore and tell stories of our days. And now we have done media such as LinkedIn to tell our stories. So I think that we need to really, really embrace that. And you can, if you follow my my storytelling at hashtag MadBob, and see then the sharing. And again, it's not the question of telling stories but it's educating one another and learning from each other. And now you have a collaborative platform where you're able to share those best practices. So it's been really cool.
Love everything you said.
And mad then isn't crazy, Bob. It's making a difference, Bob.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. And I could talk forever about this topic. I think it's super interesting, and I guess we have to meet again for another episode. Maybe we'll make it in person next time, because I think we're literally like 100 meters apart. You in All America at the park here at Forskeren. Bob, it was a real pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to be here, share your experience. Like, you got a wealth of experience in doctoral education. I know you didn't mention it, but you got 2 education awards, because you're quite inspiring. And I can talk about this from my own experience, because you do give the intro sessions for PhDs, and everyone at KI who is listening now, who has done the intro, I still do remember certain things that I really took through my PhD journey with me, because I think you said some really important, impactful stuff there. So
that's
thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that. That's the important thing. When you're teaching or when you're doing research, you want to be making a difference. That's what the MAD is. And for someone to then come back and says, well, I remember that you said this. I have it with people with supervisor training. I remember 20 years ago you said to do this, and that's something I do. I can go home happy that day. So thank you very much for sharing that with me.
Absolutely. I love this. And this is, I know how rewarding it is when you do work and then you see that it actually has an impact on the individual. So everyone who is listening from KI and you have taken the training, if you have some nice words for Bob to leave, you can leave them in the comments or text me or him. This could be an ongoing conversation. We'll invite you back again, and we'll say thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Again, and hope to see you soon. And to everyone out there, please leave a review for us if you enjoyed this episode, or leave a comment what you would like to hear about.